When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Skims or Allbirds, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and great marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling and for shoppers buying simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. It's home of Shop Pay, the #1 checkout in the world. You can use it to boost conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going through to checkout. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Allbirds uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/income, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/income to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/income.
This is The Planted Runner. I'm Coach Claire Bartholic, and welcome to another episode of the PR Training Lab. This is where I take a submission from a runner like you and create a training plan recorded live right on the podcast so you can get to know my process, understand why I make the decisions that I do, and hopefully relate to some of the runners that you hear about today. Today is going to be a little bit different. Most of the time I do training plans for races, half marathons, 5K, 10K, that sort of thing. Today, I'm going to be doing a non-race-based training plan. This is going to be for a runner named Amy, who is 46, and she is looking for a little speed and strength. If you would like to enter to win a free training plan created live on the show, all you have to do is write an Apple Podcast review. They are so helpful for the longevity of this show and for other runners to discover it. So go ahead and write that Apple Podcast review. It takes 5 minutes. And then head to theplantedrunner.com/PR lab. I'm going to go ahead and say that all again at the end of the show in case you're on a run right now. And if you're not on a run right now, you can follow along with the questions that I ask each runner who enters, which are in the show notes. So let's go ahead and get started with Amy. All right. So again, Amy is 46 years old and she doesn't even remember how she found me, but it might have been a search on Apple. So she is a podcast listener and will be listening to this episode, I'm sure. And she is not training for a specific race. She says she just wants to be a stronger runner. So I asked her, what is her goal? And Amy says, I want to increase my mileage and speed safely. I've trained for half marathons the past 2 years and always got injured because I love long runs and my intensity was way too high for many of my runs. Ooh, that is going to be something that we are going to dive into. So if you do too much too soon or too fast, too intense, that is a recipe for injury. So we can mitigate some of that injury risk by building you up gradually, by making sure your easy runs are truly easy. And that way you'll get enough recovery time before you have to do your hard runs. But if you go out and do a longer long run than your body is really prepared for, that is another way that you can break down body tissue, which can lead to injury. So we'll see if we can figure out a little bit more about Amy's experience. How long has she been running regularly? 3 years. Okay, so if she's been racing half marathons for 2 years, that means she only had about a year buildup, assuming she did them after she got started. So perhaps her body wasn't ready for it. Not really sure. She prefers to use miles, so we'll have her training plan, of course, in miles. Do you have any current or reoccurring injuries? And if so, how does this affect your running and training? She says knee issues and IT bands. I have been injury-free for over 6 months by slowing down and building mileage slowly. Okay, that is great. So being injury-free or coming back from injury is a process that definitely takes patience. It takes time. Slowing down and building up your mileage slowly are great first steps and are absolutely critical. Hopefully, she is doing some kind of rehab or physical therapy work for the issues that she has. Hopefully, she's getting stronger in the areas that may have been off balance or that helped contribute to her issues. Now, It's not always a pure strength issue that causes injury. It can be a combination of a lot of things. So it's not entirely clear that just because you're not strong enough in, let's say, your hips, that you will get a knee injury. It could be several things working together, but definitely getting stronger, slowing down your easy runs, and building in a gradual, safe way is the very best way to mitigate your injury risk and get back from an injury when you are ready. What are your recent race times and distances? She says in 2023, she ran a half marathon in 2 hours and 13 minutes. In 2024, she was supposed to run the same half marathon, but she says her son was sick, so she ran it on the treadmill. So she doesn't say if she bettered her time. So we're going to assume that her half marathon fitness is about 2:13. Now, when I set paces for runners, what I want to do is estimate your current fitness. Let's say you have a goal. That's great to have a goal. Let's pretend that Amy's goal would be 2 hours in the marathon, but she is currently at 2:13 fitness. So if I go ahead and set her paces based off her goal, not her current fitness, she's going to be running faster than she should be. Now, sometimes that is okay, but the majority of the time, we don't want to run faster than our current fitness because we want to stay in the spirit of the workout. If you're running an easy pace, that should be easy, aerobic. You should be able to talk almost as easily as walking. You should be able to close your mouth when you're running and breathe only from your nose, not the whole time, but just a few minutes per mile. If you're not doing that, you need to slow down. So yes, you might be fit enough to run faster. Of course, you're fit enough to run faster than easy pace, but you're purposely choosing to stay in certain effort zones, certain paces, because you're trying to follow the spirit of whatever workout is scheduled for you. So you don't want to run faster than the intention of the workout, even if you're hitting the paces. So what we want to do when somebody comes to me with a race that they feel matches their current fitness, they come to me with a race time, I'll go ahead and plug in that race time into a calculator that roughly estimates what you should be able to do for other race distances or other types of workouts. Now, this is just a calculator, but it should be called an estimator. My 5K pace, for example, was never as fast, relatively speaking, as my marathon pace. So my workouts wouldn't always match up to what the calculator said it was. The calculators assume that you're equally good or equally as fit in every category, which we know is humanly impossible, right? A 200-meter runner is not going to translate to the marathon, right? So think about some of the people we saw in the Olympics. I'm thinking of Gabby Thomas, who won the gold medal in the 200 meters. She never even runs longer than a mile in training. So if we were to extrapolate from her gold medal winning 200 meter finish time, what her marathon time would be, that would simply not make any sense because she has not trained for the marathon. So anyway, that's an extreme example, but it holds true for regular folks as well. So just because you type in a certain race distance and a computer comes up with other paces does not mean they are set in stone. They're a gift from God written on a tablet. Absolutely not. They are estimations of what your effort level at a certain distance might be. So take all those calculators with a grain of salt. All right. How many miles does she run a week? She says she runs about 20 miles. For those of you in metric, that's 32 kilometers. What is the highest amount of weekly mileage you've ever run? How long ago was that? She said she ran 30 miles a week last spring. So that would be in 2024. For metric folks, that's 48 kilometers. So 30 miles, I think, is a great starting point if you are a marathoner. That can be really healthy for a half marathoner. Now, this is just a generalization. I would wouldn't want somebody much lower than that if you were aiming for the marathon. With a half marathon, you might be able to get away with it. Everybody's a little different, but 30 miles is a great place to start, or a great place for some people to stay. 30 miles is a very healthy amount of running for a long distance runner who's not an elite athlete, or, who is just a normal average person, just like the rest of us. Which days of the week do you currently run? She runs Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday. That's great. I like to have everybody run the day before the long run. I've talked about this many times before. When you run the day before your long run, it simulates a longer long run. Sometimes we can add a little spice to the run the day before the long run to make the long run even more challenging, even more of a simulation of a longer long run. For half marathoners, this is usually less important, but certainly important for marathoners. She likes to run her long run on Sundays. How long is her average most recent long run? 9 miles. That's great. What pace would you say is a very easy effort, relaxed pace for an average run? This is a pace so slow that you could talk the entire time almost as easily as walking. And she wrote 12 minutes per mile, which is 727 in kilometers. Now, this is probably a pretty good spot for somebody who's a 2:13 half marathoner. It's probably a very relaxed pace for her. So I appreciate that she is running nice and easy. Again, we can throw this into the calculator and see if it actually matches up what your easy pace should be, but it's probably pretty accurate. So I like that a lot. Which days of the week do you take a full rest day, which means no running or cross training? She wrote, I generally do not take full rest days unless I really need to. Okay, a little bit of a red flag for me. I think everybody should be taking a rest day. Of course, elite athletes don't take rest days every single week. They are running doubles. They are doing all sorts of things. We are not elite athletes. And so most people do need a full rest day, at least a rest day from running. So she is running 4 days a week. Not sure what she's doing with the rest of the days. We'll find out. But a full rest day, I would say most people over 40 will need at least one a week, sometimes two. It depends on your situation. It depends on your experience in fitness. She's only been running regularly for 3 years. So I'm curious to hear if she is doing something else. What is she doing with the other days? If we're talking about something lightly aerobic, let's say it's yoga or walking, that if you consider that not a rest day, then sure, that could be a perfectly great way to balance your fitness. I don't consider walking I consider it active rest, unless you're hiking a mountain. I mean, that's different. I'm talking about walking the dog or going out for a mile or two walk, something that's less than an hour at a very easy effort. I consider that active rest. So I don't consider that to be, a non-rest day. If that was your only form of fitness, then that's a different story, but we are talking about long distance runners. So we'll find out a little bit more about what she is doing on her non-running days. What are your non-negotiables when it comes to training? She says she just needs the long run on the weekend, but she does most of her training on a treadmill with an incline due to her schedule. Okay, so treadmill running, lots to unpack there. Having a treadmill is an amazing gift. I know a lot of people think of it as a torture device. They don't want to be on it. We complain about how boring it is, but you are really actually very privileged if you have access to a treadmill, because that means that you can run no matter what the weather. If you have one at home, you can run even if the kids are at home. You don't have to get a babysitter. You have all your snacks nearby. You have your water nearby. You have your bathroom nearby. You can run in the dark. You don't have to run in unsafe situations. So a treadmill can be amazing. And it is also an excellent training tool. Now, the incline. Let's not use the incline unless we are on hills. The reason people use an incline is they're trying to simulate outdoor running a little better. People feel that the treadmill is easier than outside running. That's actually not true. Studies have shown that yes, it might actually be physically a little bit easier, but it is mentally more challenging. So your brain doesn't separate the two. So it is so close. Treadmill running is so close to outdoor running that they are virtually equivalent. Is there maybe a 5 to 2% difference in your training? Sure, let's throw that in there. But really, are we really going to do 95% of our capability as runners, as recreational runners with lives and jobs and kids and everything else? No. So the treadmill is just as good as running outside. Is it a little different? Sure. But I don't want people thinking, oh, I'm on the treadmill, I'm cheating, it's not as good as outside. That is absolute nonsense. But back to the incline, you don't have to raise the incline to make it more like outside running. The reason people do this is because it's a misinterpretation of the data. So yes, running at a slight incline, 1% will make it slightly harder. And the theory behind that is to make up for the wind resistance that you would feel outside as you're moving through space. Well, this actually only applies if you're running pretty fast on the treadmill. It's 7:08 per mile, which for most people is a very fast run. So if you really are worried about the wind resistance and making it more like outside, a better choice would be to put a fan on you. That feels better, and it's actually doing the thing that you are trying to simulate, which is create wind resistance. So don't worry about the incline, use a fan. And if you really like the incline because of your body's anatomy, it makes you feel better when you run. That is the case for some people. They like a little bit of a hill because it feels better on their lower legs. That's fine. Go ahead and use it, but don't use it to simulate outside running. All right. What are Amy's favorite kinds of running workouts? She says long runs, and yes, she enjoys them on the treadmill with iFit. So iFit is a program that will have runs that you can follow along with. You can run all over the world. You can run on specific courses. So it makes you feel like you're outside. It kind of gamifies the treadmill a little bit. What are her least favorite runs? Speed and hill workouts. Well, she wants to get faster, so we're going to have to do some of those. What kind of non-running physical activities or cross-training do you do each week? She says she does strength training 3 to 4 times a week and a lot of walking. My step count is usually between 20,000 and 30,000 steps a day. Wow. Okay. She says she's a teacher. Okay. Let's break that down. So now we know what she's doing 7 days a week. She's alternating her run days with her strength days. Now, this is something you can do, and it is something that lots of people do. But what's happening is she's not getting recovery, and especially if she is running, but if she is walking, 20,000 to 30,000 steps. So 10,000 steps for most people is about 5 miles. Okay. So she's walking 15 miles a day. That is a lot. Okay. That is a lot. And that is going to affect everything else that she is doing. So this is what I would tell Amy is we need to switch this up and get you a rest day. So if she's standing and walking all day long as a teacher, and then she's running Saturday and Sunday, she's not getting any downtime, and she's alternating her strength days and her run days. We don't want to do that. We want to stack those together a little bit so that she can have true recovery. Because when you're not recovered from workout number 1, before you go into workout number 2, you are diminishing both workouts. So you're not building from workout number 1, and you're not recovered enough to do workout number 2 as well as you possibly could. And then the cycle just keeps repeating into infinity. So what I prefer to do for the vast majority of people that can fit it into their schedule is have run days and strength days on the same day, and then have true down days, whether it's completely off or whether there is some walking. Depends on who the person is, but we have to vary intensity, having the up, down cycle, alternating hard days with easy days. That's how the body can properly build and recover. So if she is doing all of this strength training, running 30 miles a week and walking 15 miles a day, there's a lot that her body needs to recover from. So I would investigate that a little bit more and see what we can do to get poor Amy off her feet a little bit. I'll be back with more from the PR Training Lab right after this. The Planted Runner is sponsored by Liquid IV. Instead of making New Year's resolutions, I like to focus on process goals, the little rituals that soon become habits. One of mine this year is making sure I'm hydrated before, during, and after every run. One of my favorite ways to hydrate is with Liquid IV. My current favorite flavor is pina colada, which also, by the way, makes a great mocktail any time of year. In each packet, you get 8 vitamins and nutrients, 3 times the electrolytes of the leading sports drink, and no artificial sweeteners. And it's non-GMO and, of course, vegan. Make Liquid IV your new ritual this year. Just one stick with 16 ounces of water hydrates better than water alone. Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use code PLANTED at checkout. That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code PLANTED at liquidiv.com. This is The Planted Runner. I'm Coach Claire Bartholic, and welcome back to the PR Training Lab. All right, what are your biggest struggles with nutrition? She says, eating before running. I know I should, but it's hard for me to do because I wake up very early to run. Okay, this is something that absolutely must change, period, end of story. When you don't eat before you run, when you train fasted, especially for women, guys, you might be able to get away with it and be okay. Women, this is not okay. Our bodies freak out when we are starving, okay? If you have ever listened to the work of the exercise physiologist, Stacy Sims, go ahead and follow her. This is super, super important. She's not a big advocate of running, but definitely take her advice about hormones and exercise for women, especially women over 40. When you don't eat before you exercise, your brain thinks that you are starving. And whenever your brain thinks that you are starving, what it does is it ramps up cortisol. And that is the hormone that is very important. But when the levels are elevated for too long, it tells your body to hold on to fat. It tells your body that you are in a stress state. Then when you don't eat soon enough after your workout, you stay in that catabolic state. So the muscle breakdown that you had from your run will continue longer. And so when your body is scared that it is starving, it holds onto fat and it throws away muscle. That is the opposite of what most people want to be doing. So eating before a run, I'm sorry, I don't care how early you wake up. If you have time to put on your shoes, you have time to eat some rice. You have time to eat a cracker. You have time to eat a fig bar. You have time to eat a granola bar, you have time to eat a banana, you have time to eat a graham cracker, whatever it is. You need to have some calories in your body. It does not have to be a full meal, but you need to get some carbohydrate in before you run. And if you are having a strength session, you're not running, you need to have some carbohydrate and a little bit of protein. I'm not talking very much, 100, 200 calories, not a full meal, but this calms your brain down and allows it to feel safe when exercising. If your brain does not feel safe, it will turn on all the alarms and it will turn your body into this higher stress state. So not only will you not have the workout that you want to have, but you will not recover the way that you should. And so you're basically diminishing your effort. So it doesn't matter how early you wake up. You need to eat before you exercise. You need to find something that you can eat while you are tying your shoes. So this is something that absolutely has to change. Putting my foot down. This is the most important thing that you can do when you are getting ready for a run. So if you have to wake up 5 minutes earlier, set the alarm 5 minutes earlier, go to bed 5 minutes earlier. This is a non-negotiable, especially for women. What are your biggest struggles mentally when it comes to success and performance? She says that I can do it without getting injured. I've signed up for various 5Ks and the 2 half marathons in the past couple of years. Something always seems to happen during training, or I am sick, or a family member is sick on race day. I feel like I am doomed, LOL. Well, you are not doomed, certainly. You're not doomed, but I'm starting to wonder if you are overdoing it and under eating at the same time. This is what I'm starting to suspect is going on. That is definitely a recipe for injury and sickness. So I don't know 100% if that is the case, but if you're constantly getting injured, that is typically a training issue, but it's exacerbated if you're not getting enough food on board. So if you're just never recovering from your workouts, then you're going to be breaking down. Obviously, if a family member is sick, that's out of our control. So hopefully that's not going to happen in the future. So you can do this, Amy, without getting injured. There's no guarantee stuff happens. Even the most prepared athlete that's doing everything right has a chance of getting injured. Of course, it can happen, but you definitely can lower the risk by alternating your training, growing slowly, building slowly, eating enough, and eating at the right times. What are you hoping to learn or gain in this training cycle? She says she'd like to be a better, stronger runner, and hopefully I can get faster without getting injured. So yes, you can. It's all about timing, and it's about recovery, and of course about nutrition and sleep. So yes, it is possible, and I would love to teach her how. Anything else that you'd like to share that would be helpful to your success? She says, I've done a lot of knee mobility in the past 6 months, which has helped tremendously. Okay, so she is doing some PT, physical therapy work, mobility work, so that's great. Along with wearing barefoot shoes almost exclusively, except for running. Barefoot shoes can be great when you're just going about your daily life or when you're lifting weights. It helps keep your feet strong. Whether you should use that for running or not is something that is very individual. I have done that, and it is certainly not for me, but some runners have good success with it. But I will say there are 0 elite runners, marathon runners that are running in barefoot shoes that are getting fast times. So it's definitely not the best tool for fast running, but she says she doesn't do that for running. She says also, I have been on a Whole Foods SOFAS-free 95% of the time for the past 13 years. Okay, so let's pick apart that acronym for you if you don't know. So Whole Foods plant-based and SOFAS free diet. So SOFAS stands for sugar, oil, flour, alcohol, and salt. Okay, so Amy is not eating any salt, oil, flour, alcohol, and sugar. That can be a problem for runners, okay? Not so much the oil, flour, and alcohol. You can definitely get away with that. Salt and sugar, that can be a big deal, okay? So if she's not eating any sugar, then how is she fueling her runs? Well, she could be eating fruit. You can eat dried fruit. You could have dates. You can have applesauce. There are things that you can have on a run that don't involve refined sugar. So she's having only whole foods. That can work for some people, but for the vast majority of people, if you are trying to fuel your run, and I'm talking any run longer than 60 minutes, with whole foods, what happens is that the fiber in something like dates or tart cherries, or maybe she's eating rice or mashed bananas, the fiber in these foods can upset your stomach. Not to mention chewing while running is very difficult if you're trying to run fast. So not having any sugar, I understand the point of not having sugar, refined sugar, if you are just a normal person going through their daily lives. But as an endurance runner, that is going to be a limiting factor. It definitely will. So you can do it if that is more important to you than running your fastest half marathon or running your fastest marathon. It can be done, but you are making it more difficult. So the thing about sugar is your body processes it very differently when you're on the couch versus when you are running. So if you are eating a big bowl of ice cream sitting on the couch, your body's going to be like, great, give me all that fat and sugar and I'm going to store it. But if you're eating that same amount of sugar, not fat, I wouldn't say use ice cream for your runs, but if you're eating that same amount of sugar while you are running, it is going to be used as energy by the muscles immediately. It's not going to cause any of the damage that you're worried about. It is not going to be stored as fat. It is going to be used on that run and disappear from your body. So sugar is actually a good thing when you are running long distances. Now, salt, if you really are salt-free, that is also going to be a limiting factor when it comes to hydration. So if you are running in a hot place, you're running and losing a lot of sweat, you have to replace that sodium. If you do not, if you simply drink water, that can be an extremely dangerous situation. It can lead to a condition called hyponatremia, where your sodium levels get so low. And if you're trying to drink water, you're thirsty, or you're on a schedule to drink water and there's no salt involved, that can actually be deadly. It's water toxicity is another name for it. But really, it's less about the water and more about having low salt. So that can be a big problem. So if you're not over drinking, but you're simply sweating, losing sodium, then what happens is you're probably going to slow down and or stop, because it's going to be so difficult to keep up your performance level when you get to a certain level of dehydration. So it's not only about losing the water, it is about losing the sodium. Yes, there's a bunch of other electrolytes that are involved too, but none of them affect performance like sodium does. So you can replace all of these things, all of the other electrolytes, with food. There is salt naturally occurring in some foods, of course, but if you are going out for hours-long sweaty runs and you're not replacing your salt, it can actually be quite dangerous. So I would say in general, for your daily life, it's perfectly fine to have a low sodium diet. It's perfectly fine to have a low sugar, no refined sugar diet. You're going to run into trouble as an endurance runner, okay? So, but being whole foods, plant-based, you're eliminating all these other things. What she didn't say is what she's actually eating. So I am concerned that she might not be eating enough for her activity level. I don't know the details of all of this, but she's walking 15 miles a day and she's running 20 to 30 miles a week. To be able to replace all of those calories without any artificial products, entirely on a plant-based, whole foods, plant-based diet. So basically things that you just pick from the ground or pick from the vine, that kind of thing. No bread, no grain. Well, she's probably having grains, but she's having no flour. That is going to be a massive volume of food. So she's probably spending just as much time eating as she is walking. So I would be concerned a little bit there. Be interesting to see exactly how she is getting enough volume of food, because if she's really going low calorie, which, if you cut out the oil and the sugar and the flour, you're going to be left with things that are high volume, but low calories. So this is going to be probably a massive amount of food. Maybe she's eating nuts and seeds. Those are more calorie dense. So you can, get your calories up that way. But nuts and seeds are mostly fat and then protein. So maybe she's on a higher fat diet that can help supplement calories, but runners don't need a ton of fat. What they mostly need is carbohydrate, which you can get plenty of on a plant-based diet, and protein, which you can get plenty of on a plant-based diet as long as your calorie intake is high enough. So she really is being specific with her diet. I hope she is being cognizant of the amount of calories that she is getting to support her training. So now I want to talk a little bit about how I plan a cycle for speed and strength, or speed and mileage. How does that look different from a 5K schedule, a half marathon schedule, a marathon schedule? So the first thing I would want to know is, what are you building up towards in the future? Do you simply want to just improve as an athlete, or do you kind of have an eye on the half marathon or marathon? Because if she does not want to be a marathon runner, we do not need to get her long run up that high. It's not that important for your physical health or fitness, really, to run longer than 10 miles, give or take. You don't need to run a marathon for physical health, right? It's technically over-exercising for a lot of people. You don't need that to be a fast runner or a strong runner. So we don't want to have the long run super duper long if we really want to have speed, because your body can really only do one thing at a time. You want to focus on speed? Great. You want to focus on endurance? Great. Or you want to focus on strength? That's good. So you don't only have to do one of those three things at a time, but you do have to prioritize one of those things at a time. Or if you choose not to, let's say you choose to do all of those things equally, you're going to stay relatively average at all of those things. And if that's your goal, that's actually pretty awesome. You're well-rounded and you're fit in all the areas. So that can be great. But if you're trying to have a specific cycle where you work on one thing, in this case, speed, then we want to focus on prioritizing that and then taking down the rest of the other workouts so they can support that. So if you're running these really long runs on the weekend, how fast are you going to be able to run your track days? You're not going to be able to run them as fast because you're not recovered. So we don't want to have the long run be super duper long. We're not trying to increase that, but we do want to have these really quality sessions during the week. So we might start her off at one track style day, so working at her higher end fitness. So these would be short repeats with plenty of rest. And we also might do a little bit of stamina work. It really kind of depends on what kind of fitness she is looking for. If we are looking to really just become a much faster runner, what we're going to prioritize is much faster running. Now, that doesn't mean more time spent running fast, because you can only do a certain amount of speed work and actually have it be effective. But what that means is we're going to prioritize that, which means taking down everything else. Maybe that means bumping down the mileage, or more likely it's going to be looking at the frequency, looking at the schedule. So we want to prioritize that Tuesday track session, which might mean no running the day before, or only a little bit of mobility work the day before so that you're fresh. And we want to look at what we're doing the day after. We don't want to have a big heavy lifting day the day before or after our track session, because that is going to take away from our big day. So the big day in a speed focused cycle isn't your long run. It's going to be that track session. Now, there are other ways to build speed. One of my favorites is doing strides. So strides are short sprint-like drills that you would do after an easy run. So most of the time I'll assign 4 times 20 seconds. So we want a 20-second almost sprint, and then about 2 minutes of standing around to catch your breath. Then you would repeat that 4 times. So what we're looking for is not necessarily your fastest effort. We don't want you throwing up on the side of the road, but we want about 90%. And it's a gradual up to the fastest you can get, 90%, I mean, and then coming back down to earth. Okay. So it is more of a speed drill than it is actual fast running, but it's a way for your brain and your legs to talk to each other to make sure that the turnover of your legs happens faster. So we'll want to do drills like that. There are other drills that you can do. You might see track stars doing some A skips or B skips, mobility drills, fast feet drills. There's tons of those on the internet that you can try. I like to give plyometric drills to my runners, to all runners really, which are jumping drills. Those help work on your strength, speed, and power. So you definitely want to incorporate those. Now, she does want to work on her mileage as well. So I still would not focus on that long run. Maybe I would get her up to 10 miles. She says she's already at 9 miles. I don't want her long run any longer because that's going to take away from the rest of the work that she is doing. We might start to incorporate a second speed day. That would be a more stamina style speed day, which would be like a tempo run. A tempo run, for those of you who aren't familiar, is a run that it's basically the speed that you could run the fastest for about 40 to 60 minutes. We're not going to have you run for 40 to 60 minutes, but it might be a 20-minute tempo or a 30-minute tempo, something in that neighborhood. So it's a medium high effort that works on your stamina, and we can play with that in several different ways. So in order to build a well-rounded sense of speed for somebody who considers themselves an endurance athlete, what I will do is set up a cycle that I like to call the kitchen sink. I throw a whole bunch of things at them. So it will be tempo runs. It'll be 5K type work. It will be VO2 max, mile repeats. It'll be a bunch of different things to see what sticks, because you really do want to work on yourself as a holistic athlete. You don't want to totally say, okay, we're only working on speed, but we want to prioritize speed, if that makes sense. So yes, it is the goal, but that can't be the only thing that you are doing, or you're going to have weaknesses in other areas. Well, I hope that explains a little bit more about what we are doing when we're doing a speed cycle versus a race cycle. We're not really tapering somebody into peaking on a certain day. This is something that is going to be buildable over time. So when Amy finishes this cycle, she could go into a marathon or half marathon cycle very strong and fit, but well-rounded and ready for the next thing. So you could think of it maybe as a maintenance cycle, but it's more than maintenance, because we're really focusing on an area that most long distance runners don't give proper prioritization to. And that's what we're going to do with Amy. Hopefully she is going to be eating and sleeping enough to be able to support this higher intensity work. And I'm really looking forward to making her plan. All right, that is it for the PR Training Lab. Again, if you would like to enter to win a free training plan created here live on the show, just write an Apple Podcast review first and then go to theplantedrunner.com/PR Lab. And all of the questions that I ask each runner are in the show notes. Thank you for listening to The Planted Runner, part of the Evergreen Podcast Network. If you enjoyed this episode, the very best way to keep it going is completely free, and it takes 5 minutes. Just write an Apple Podcast review. Tell me and the world what you think, and you'll help boost this show's reach more than you can imagine. I read every single one, and I am immensely grateful to have your support. Have a great run today.
Women's Running Stories, where we explore the intersection between running and life. Because every woman who is committed to a running journey has a story to tell, and this is where you'll find those stories. I am host and producer Cherie Louise Turner. I'm a 53-year-old runner, and together with original music by musician and runner Cormac O'Regan, we bring these inspirational stories to life. Please join us to fuel your adventures.